So much, and I've got to tell you, Tucker, I always want to stay on your good side. All right, welcome to Hannity. I'm Janine Pirro in for Sean. There's a lot of major breaking news tonight. We start with President Trump and Republicans scoring a major victory and keeping a huge promise to the American people by passing a historic tax cut bill. The president and members of the GOP celebrated the accomplishment at the White House. Let's take a look.
It's been an amazing experience, I have to tell you. Hasn't been done in 34 years, but actually really hasn't been done because we broke every record. It's the largest, I always say the most massive, but it's the largest tax cut in the history of our country, and reform, but tax cut.
You've ended the overregulation of the American economy. And that, coupled with what we did last night and what the House finished this morning, means America is going to start growing again. Thank you, Mr. President, for all you're doing.
Something this big, something this generational, something this profound could not have been done without exquisite presidential leadership. Mr. President, thank you for getting us over the finish line. Thank you for getting us where we are. This gets the American economy competitive in the global economy. This is one of the most important things we could do for all of the people we represent.
And we're going to keep fighting, and we're going to make this the greatest presidency that we've seen, not only in generations, but maybe ever. God bless all of you.
They have been working on this for years, years and years. And I just want to turn around and I want to thank them all. They are very, very special people. Thank you very much, everybody.
As a result of the tax bill passing, major companies like AT&T, Comcast, and Wells Fargo have announced employee bonuses or wage increases. President Trump also fulfilled part of another key promise with his tax bill, the repeal of the Obamacare individual mandate. Watch this.
So in this bill, not only do we have massive tax cuts and tax reform, we have essentially repealed Obamacare, and we'll come up with something that will be much better, whether it's block grants or whether it's taking what we have and doing something terrific. But Obamacare has been repealed in this bill. We didn't want to bring it up. I told people specifically, be quiet with the fake news media because I don't want them talking too much about it, because I didn't know how people would. But now that it's approved, I can say the individual mandate on health care, where you had to pay not to have insurance. Okay, think of that one. You pay not to have insurance. The individual mandate has been repealed.
Also tonight, the clock is ticking for Congress to reach an agreement to avoid a government shutdown that's set to begin this Friday at midnight. Ed Henry's in Washington with the latest. Ed?
Judge, good to see you. They can't celebrate this tax victory for long. They are facing that looming crisis tonight. Government funding set to expire late Friday, so they're talking about a short-term budget to keep it open until roughly January 19th. Then they'll have more talks. One sign of progress tonight is Republican leaders agreed to drop a provision to prop up the Obamacare markets that had angered conservatives. By leaving that Obamacare fix on the shelf, they have a shot at getting enough Republican votes in the House and Senate to keep the government open without needing any Democratic help. It's going to be hard to get even a small number of Democratic votes to pass the budget because liberal leaders like Nancy Pelosi signaled today they want to go back to resist. Pelosi firing off a letter to her Democratic colleagues that without adding new spending projects plus legislation allowing the children of illegal immigrants to stay in America, quote, we continue to urge a strong no on the continuing resolution. That hints at a government shutdown, as some of the president's outside advisors that run the nonprofit America First policies is planning a $1 million TV ad blitz focused on the positive of his agenda, what he's accomplished this year. The ad starts running on Christmas Day, but we're getting a sneak peek tonight.
Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you.
Everyday Americans are standing up to thank President Trump.
Thank you so much
for making America great again.
Thank you for cutting my taxes.
Thank you for fixing our economy.
Thank you for keeping my family safe.
Thank you for putting America first.
Now, the president's advisors tell me the point is they feel the president has been beaten up from day one. And despite all of the critics, there are millions of Americans who are grateful for his leadership, particularly on tax reform. And they're eager to get him going to pass other big items like infrastructure and immigration reform. So they do not want a government shutdown right now to slow the momentum they believe he has. And in fact, the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin, is telling our own Brett Baer tonight he believes they'll find a way to avoid a government shutdown, Judge.
Thanks so much, Ed. And joining us now with reaction to President Trump and the GOP's big tax victory is counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Good evening, Kellyanne. I'll bet it was an exciting day at the White House.
It has been indeed. There's a buoyancy and a vibrancy. You saw it there on full display. You saw the president really calling out by name the leaders in the House and Senate, the chairman of the different committees, and really the rank and file Republicans. Unfortunately, there were no Democrats there because none of them took an opportunity to give tax cuts and relief to our job creators, to middle class families. And they're going to have to go home this Christmas and all next year and explain why they insisted this was a tax cut for the rich when just today you had major companies say they're going to give bonuses and other charitable contributions to their employees. Are those employees receiving, those hardworking men and women, the rich? So I think the Democrats missed a huge opportunity here. It was President Trump's leadership that really put this over the top.
Kellyanne,
he worked very closely with the Congress.
Let me ask you something. You know, when I heard that AT&T was going to give bonuses, something like $1,000
to 200,000 employees.
It's
unbelievable.
How do the Democrats spin that this is a bad thing? And how long is it going to take for people to recognize that this tax cut, tax reform is indeed what the president and his supporters have said it is?
Indeed, I think they'll see it right away. And somebody at the podium today was making a very good point that there are a couple of dates for Americans to look at, Janine. One is January 1st. Starting next year, literally, we'll have a different kind of tax code that we all live under. In February, many Americans will start to see the increases in their pay. Their paychecks will get fatter under this paycheck president. And in April, of course, April 15th, a day many Americans dread, they will recognize that many of them will simplify the way they file their taxes. They'll take back so much of those wasted hours and wasted money. Then they'll start to see many of these businesses repatriate the trillions of dollars that is parked legally offshore. We're going from the offshoring model to the American model, and it will make our job creators more competitive. I think today was a real turning point in terms of showing that the Congress and the presidency can work together, president can work together to deliver for the American people. This was not a campaign promise. This is a moral imperative for people who deserve to keep more of their money.
And you know, what is sometimes overlooked in this whole thing is that the repeal of the individual mandate, the requirement that people who don't buy insurance are going to be fined by all of those additional hirees at the IRS, and I assume that they won't be there much longer, you know, is something that it's a good thing?
So today was really three bills in one, and it was quite historic on every level. The tax cuts themselves are historic, as the president noted, but having the repeal of the Obamacare mandate also means that another signature piece of the Trump agenda that helped propel him to victory over Hillary Clinton has all but been fulfilled. That the Democrats who took the chance on the Obamacare mandate, insisting that that individual mandate would attract the young and healthy to the exchanges, it did not do that. The young and healthy were too smart. They wouldn't do it. And the whole thing collapses. You know, 30 million Americans, Janine, don't have health care as we speak. The insurers all fled the exchanges. It became prohibitive for them. And the third thing in this 3-for-1 was Anwar. This has taken 40 years for a president and a Congress to pass what others, including President Reagan and Presidents Bush's, tried to do, which is start drilling responsibly so that we are more energy dependent on America. We create those jobs. We tap those resources. I mean, some of the estimates are truly incredible. But all of this put together America is going to see almost immediately what a difference there is in the economy. And let's face it, Janine, the tax cuts is the centerpiece of what's been regulatory rollback, energy independence, and really great booming stock market for the entire year he's been president.
Well, and you know what's interesting is they say that the booming stock market is it's not even reflecting the confidence that we're going to be seeing once it happens. But I want to ask you about this deal on DACA and the continuing resolution, the possibility of the government shutdown Friday, I believe it is. Now, do the Democrats, none of whom voted for this tax cut, do they have any leverage as it relates to the continuing resolution and forcing some of the issues that they'd like to have pass?
They have a great deal of explaining to do, I believe, as to why none of them could admit that individuals and employers in their states and their congressional districts would benefit from this. It's very clear they would. So they'll have to explain that in due course. On the continuing resolution, we feel confident and we are very hopeful that the Democrats will not allow petty partisan politics to get in the way of keeping our government open and funding obligations to the military and elsewise. Now, on immigration, people should review the president's entire 70-point immigration plan, Judge Janine, because in it you will see everything from DACA to ending chain migration to ending this visa lottery program to having thousands more ICE agents on the border so that we can get more security. We have a 50% decrease in illegal crossings since he was elected. We want the poison out of our country. 90% of heroin, the president has said, comes through the southern border. We have fentanyl coming in. And so all of this adds up to a president who's put forth a 70-point immigration plan, including a merit-based system, and everybody should read it and not just focus on any one component.
But we don't have to worry that DACA is something that they can leverage before the continuing resolution and that the CR will pass, correct?
I would hope so, because the president has made very clear that he wants that wall funded, and that is not negotiable. And anybody who wants to bring to the table their chief concerns will also have to hear his.
Do we
and
know
I would say
do we
he
know
really
when
has
the president,
the upper hand here.
Kellyanne, I don't mean to rush you, but do we know when the president is going to sign this bill?
Sign the continuing resolution?
No, the tax reform.
Oh, well, there are processes that need to, and protocols that need to be followed, as I understand it. And so you can expect him to do that in due course over the next couple of weeks, I suppose it could happen, I'm told. But today, people can rest assured that that is a formality. The passage is real, and you saw corporate America respond to it today by passing it on. Unlike all the predictions, Janine, all the breathless predictions where corporate America would never allow this tax cut to redound to the benefit of the little guy, of the worker. They were going to stick it in their own pockets. The minute it passed, before the president even went out to the South Lawn, they had already announced these bonuses. They predicted a year ago global recession, stock market crashes, a disaster everywhere. The opposite has happened. The consumer confidence is historic. The unemployment rate is low, the lowest ever among Hispanics, lower for African Americans and women and teens in a while. And so all of this knitted together shows a president and his leadership that has been able to realize a piece of legislation that many members who stood behind him tomorrow had voted on many years, only to have it die on a president's desk. And some of those had voted for the Reagan tax cuts, and they think this is even more bold.
Well, Kellyanne, we very much appreciate it. Congratulations. You can continue celebrating tonight.
Congratulations to America. Thank you.
Yes, take care. And joining us with reaction, our radio talk show host, Larry Elder, former Clinton pollster, Fox News contributor Doug Schoen, and Fox News contributor Lisa Booth. All right. Now, Doug, I'm going to ask you a question, okay? Because clearly the one Democrat on the panel, what if the Democrats are saying, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, and people start seeing on February 1, the date that they've identified as the date when the people are going to be seeing more money in their paychecks, I mean, doesn't that bode very poorly for the Democrats in 2018?
Well, it could. There are a couple of daunting statistical challenges the president and Republicans face. The bill now polls unpopularly. The Democrats are 10 or 11 points ahead in the generic vote.
Right.
So this is going to take a campaign of the type that the president, I see, is launching on Christmas Day to sell the bill, because rest assured, the Democrats will be out selling the opposite message. So there's still a major road to hoe for the administration.
All right, Lisa, I'll ask you this. I mean, clearly the fact that the bill is so unpopular with the American people, and that the president, as Doug said, and as we heard earlier, is going to start, this whole campaign talking about the benefits. The Democrats really are in a bad situation if indeed, this bill delivers what they say it's going to deliver, which is that, 80% of households are going to get a tax cut. Middle incomes, 90% are going to pay less. What do the Dems do when that happens?
Well, and especially because Democrats have set the bar at saying that this is going to be Armageddon. This is apocalyptic.
Don't look
right?
at me, Lisa.
I know, you're not like that. But so when you set the terms in that ridiculous of a manner, of course it's not going to be that. As you mentioned, 80% of Americans are going to see tax cuts. And the reason why that this is polling so poorly is largely in part because of the media. They carry the water for the Democratic Party. Look at the Associated Press. After the House passed this bill, they sent out a tweet breaking, and all it mentions is the fact that this is getting done after 3 decades, mentioning steep tax cuts for businesses and the wealthy. Didn't mention anything about the middle-class families who are the beneficiaries of this bill.
Because those are their talking points. Larry, what's your take on all this?
Ultimately, this bill will be judged by its results, just as the American people judged Ronald Reagan by its results. And that is why Ronald Reagan's second tax cut bill, only 3 senators opposed it. Among them was not Ted Kennedy. The soul of the Democratic Party has switched Kennedys from Jack Kennedy to Ted Kennedy, and has now gone from Ted Kennedy to Bernie Sanders. That's where these guys are. The American people will see a raise in their checks. They will see greater economic security, and that's what will determine whether or not the Republicans do well or badly in 2018, and whether or not Donald Trump is reelected in 2020.
What about, Doug, what happened with AT&T?
Yeah.
The 200,000 people getting into $1,000. I mean, the bill hasn't even been signed yet. The stock market, they say, hasn't been factored into the rise, which is historic. I mean, how do they continue to be able to sell this to the American people that the Republicans are bad for the economy?
Well, there's a simple talking point that they have to rebut, which is the highest rate is 37 on individuals, 21 on corporations. Ipso facto, a break for the corporations. But you make an important point, Judge, which I think deserves to be underscored. The administration needs help. They can't do it on a partisan basis. And if I was with the president, I'd say, Mr. President, great that you thank Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. Don't mention their names again, because they're really,
But it's not just the bonus.
You got to get the corporations and working people out speaking in favor of the bill.
And it's not just the bonuses, though. There's also investments, because Comcast has also announced $50 billion over the next 5 years. AT&T said that if tax reform got done, that they would invest $1 billion. So we're going to see more investment.
But that's a little long term. I mean, this is so immediate. But this is unbelievable.
But I think when Americans see that, though, they recognize the impact of this. And Republicans do have to sell it, and they have to sell it against the odds of the media being against them. But I think they can do it, and that's what they're going to do when they go home to their states and their constituencies.
And Larry, don't you agree that this is one time where, irrespective of what the mainstream media says, when Joe Smith gets his his paycheck and he looks at it and he sees a difference on February 1, he's going to say, whoa, this is real.
Absolutely. And there's one other thing that we haven't talked very much about, and that is that this bill gets rid of the death tax. Guess who's opposed to the death tax? The National Black Chamber of Commerce. The head of Black Enterprise, the founder of Black Enterprise, also wrote op-ed pieces against the death tax. I thought Donald Trump disliked people of color. I thought he didn't like black people. He also praised Tim Scott, the black Republican from South Carolina, who helped him push this bill through. I thought Donald Trump did not like people of color. Oh, my goodness. Maybe some people are going to have to rethink some of their assumptions. God forbid.
Well, and you know what? I have to tell you, Larry, and I'll go to you, Doug. I mean, hearing Tim Scott today, he was talking about, and every one of them was so genuine who got up, with their, not just their satisfaction with the bill finally passing, but you could feel it was emotional, where Tim Scott says they are investing now in opportunities. Trillions are going to go into the poor communities.
Sure. A couple of things. Look, I think Lisa's right, much as she likes to castigate Democrats.
Can you say that again?
No, I will say it again, because this has to get sold by people other than politicians. And they have a real problem in blue states, because there are...
New York, New Jersey, California, Connecticut, forget it.
Well, that's right, but I think there are 15 or 20 Republican congressmen up there and another 10 or 15 on the West Coast. Look, the House could swing based on the elimination of the deductibility of state and local taxes. They need a special job in blue states to sell the broader benefits. They need to do it on a broad scale basis without the political class
involved. It's the big, beautiful tax cuts, right? Everyone wanted for Christmas.
Except when the taxes go up in those states.
You know, and Lisa and Larry, I just have a little time left. I mean, you know, for those states where state and local taxes are no longer deductible, there's a limit, you know, on, on mortgages. I mean, that's Joe Smith, too.
Yeah, I mean, that is going to be a tough sell. I mean, this is one of the areas where those members of Congress in those states were concerned about that, the House members. So I think it is a concern for Republicans.
Okay, all right. And Larry, just finally, I've got to go in a second, but your take on how they're going to deal with it?
Obama gave us a 2% recovery. Ronald Reagan gave us a 4% plus recovery. Got overwhelmingly reelected in 1986, 49 states to 1. Wow. I wouldn't worry too much if we get a 4% GDP growth.
All right.
We're lost in the House, 2 in the Senate.
Thank you all. Got heartbreaking. Coming up, Democrats and the media are completely losing it over the Republican tax bill. We'll show you the latest out-of-control examples. Plus, a Fox News exclusive report, Congress plans to issue new subpoenas over conflicts in Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe's testimony yesterday. Congressman Raul Labrador and Greg Jarrett and Pam Bondi will react next. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hannity. Republicans officially passed their tax cut plan, and predictably, Democrats and the media did their best to paint the bill as a disaster for America. Take a look at this.
In this case, it seems like this is the wrong tax cut at the wrong time, directed at the wrong people.
It was a classic bait and switch. They dangled out there for the middle class. They're expecting a tax cut. And what it's really doing is helping the corporate special interests as well as the wealthiest in this nation.
I'll ask you plainly, are you living in a fantasy world?
Now, we know they're popping champagne down Pennsylvania Avenue. There are only 2 places where America's popping champagne: the White House and the corporate boardrooms, including Trump Tower. Otherwise, Americans have a lot to regret.
After all the president's promises, after all Republicans' brazenly transparent misrepresentations to the American people, the true face of what Republicans stand for has been revealed.
Well, it is a victory for billionaires like Donald Trump. It's a victory for wealthy campaign contributors like the Koch brothers. But this is a disaster for the American people.
In response to the bill's critics, President Trump tweeted, quote, "The tax cuts are so large and so meaningful, and yet the fake news is working overtime to follow the lead of their friends, the defeated Dems, and only demean. This is truly a case," he continues, "where the results will speak for themselves starting very soon. Jobs, jobs, jobs." And joining us now with reaction is author and host of The Dana Show on Radio America, Dana Lash, America First Action spokesman and senior advisor, former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark, and incoming Heritage Foundation President Kay Cole James. All right, good evening. I have to tell you, and I'll start with you, Dana. I mean, Armageddon, the wrong bill at the wrong time. Are you living in a fantasy world? I mean, don't they totally lose their credibility?
They do lose their credibility. Imagine they wanted to increase and keep high Americans' taxes for Christmas. Not a single Democrat was supporting this bill. You're not going to be able, they cannot lie to the American people when the American people see that they are keeping more of their money because these are going to kick in really quick. You can't lie to people about what's in their bank account. You can't lie to them about what's written on their checks. They're going to immediately start feeling relief, as we've seen from AT&T, as we've seen from Boeing. This is our money. And corporations, and by the way, Chuck Schumer was attacking AT&T, claiming in video that AT&T was going to use this to enrich themselves. And what does AT&T do? They announced that they're investing in their employees and their community, as is Boeing and other companies, because this is how economics work. This is how math works. They're on the wrong side of the history on this. And I have to say, I think today, so far, has been the greatest day of President Trump's administration. This was a great day, a historic day.
All right, and I'll go to you, David Clark. I mean, the whole idea that Dana leaves us with is the repeal of the individual mandate in Obamacare.
This whole thing is fantastic. Look, tax cuts drive Democrats and liberals crazy. They are the tax and spend party, and they've been that for a long time. President Donald Trump knows that this economy, in order to get it kick-started, needed fuel. That fuel was this tax reform and tax cut bill. There's been nothing but good signs out of this economy since he's taken office in January. Under Obama, we had nothing but stifling taxes, stifling job creation, loss of jobs, companies moving overseas. His policies had the effect of having its boot on the neck of the American company. Well, that boot has been taken off today with this historic tax reform bill.
And Kay, I'll go to you. I mean, you know, incoming president to the Heritage Foundation. I mean, how do you view this passage?
Well, first of all, you know, it's an exciting Christmas for me, coming to the Heritage Foundation and then the president and the speaker and the majority leader delivering a present like this for all Americans. You know, facts are stubborn things, and no matter what the Democrats say today, the reality is the American people are going to see those tax cuts in their wallets. They're going to see them in their paychecks. They're going to see it in the jobs that are being created. And no matter what they say, no matter how they try to demagogue this issue, the reality is Americans got a wonderful gift today. And, you know, I don't think that the champagne is being popped in corporate boardrooms, but the reality is there are some American people sitting around their kitchen tables this evening that have a lot to be grateful for to this president and to this Congress.
And Dana, clearly, I mean, this is a great time of year. So when I hear the Democrats saying it's the wrong bill at the wrong time, I mean, first of all, this is the best time to do it. That's just my take on the holidays. But more than that, Dana, if they're really that angry about it, this continuing resolution that's coming up, you know, the government shutdown on Friday, I mean, they would shut the government down. I mean, but they're not going to oppose this, are they? The continuing resolution.
No, and they shouldn't be. They shouldn't. They shouldn't oppose this, and they shouldn't try to shut government down because they're having a tantrum over Americans getting to keep more of their own money. You know, according to Democrats, there's no good time to allow Americans to keep more of their own money. and Judge Janina, I want to add as well, for individuals that are so upset that the government is allowing them to keep more of their own money, this is just the minimum. I want to remind people, they are free. We live in America. God bless the USA. They're free to pay more to the government if they so choose. They can write a check to the Treasury and they can pay more. They don't have to listen to the government's minimum suggestions in terms of tax brackets. They can pay 50%, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100% of their income to the government. That's their choice.
But David Clark, what do you say to those who say that it has a negative impact on the debt, that it's going to increase the debt?
Well, you know, that stuff remains to be seen. But here's the issue for the president today. He has to get this economy going. He's already done that. But this thing is going to pick up steam. And if the Democrats don't get out of the way, they're going to get run over by this robust economy. They're trying to throw a wet blanket over this historic occasion, but it's not going to work. The American people sent Donald Trump. Like I said, the only person in Washington, D.C. who's actually created jobs has been Donald Trump. He understands the role that the politics can play in either stifling the economy or giving it juice. So this is good. And as soon as this thing really takes off, I think it's a good night for the Democrats.
All right, and I'm going to ask that we listen to some sound from Representative Jackie Speier, and then I'll go to you.
This is the ultimate bad Christmas Carol story. This may be the most shameful day in the history of Congress. Wealthy Americans, big fat Christmas present for you. Tiny Tim, we're taking your crutch away from you and all the other kids in this country, and we're putting a lump of coal into your Christmas stocking. It's shameful. It should not be happening in this country of so much wealth and so much greatness, that we would allow these children and the 370,000 pregnant women in this country that also rely on CHIP, that we would shut them out of health care.
Kay, this is the same Congresswoman who said last week that the president was going to fire Mueller, that when everybody went on vacation, he was going to do it. And she had it on, a good reason that this is what was going to happen. She was clearly wrong. The president came out a minute later and said not. But Kay, what do you think?
That is just absolutely shameful. I mean, to use Tiny Tim, come on now, and his crutch. The reality is the American people are not going to fall for that. Democrats have got to come up with something better than that. We hold at the Heritage Foundation, we hold everybody's feet to the fire.
Yes,
Democrats
you do.
and Republicans. We really, really do. And when Republicans are wrong, we'll call them on it. We're just getting started, by the way, on tax reform. There's much more that we can do, but going before the American people with Tiny Tim at Christmas, come on now.
Well, you know what, and this is the biggest tax reform certainly in 31 years, but I think it's all going to bode well for Americans. I want to thank you, Dana, David,
really
and Kay, for being with us tonight. And coming up, a breaking Fox News exclusive report. During his testimony yesterday, Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe had conflicted statements from other previous witnesses. Greg Jared, Pam Bondi will have reaction next. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hannity. We are learning more about FBI Director Andrew McCabe's 7-hour appearance before the House Intelligence Committee last night on the ongoing Russia investigation. Congressional investigators are exclusively telling Fox News that McCabe's testimony contained numerous conflicts with statements made by previous witnesses. According to these sources, the big issue at hand is whether McCabe told the truth about the FBI's probe into the anti-Trump dossier and the exact time frame when he found out that it was funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign as well as the Democratic National Committee. Due to McCabe's alleged discrepancies, Republicans on the committee are planning to issue fresh subpoenas next week on Justice Department and FBI personnel. Joining us now with reaction, Republican Congressman Raul Labrador. All right, good evening, Congressman. Thanks so much for being here. This 7-hour testimony by McCabe seems to present a lot of paradoxes that, apparently these guys don't have their stories together, which suggests to me as a judge that somebody's lying.
Oh, we have a major problem. We have the Department of Justice that has an issue with the subpoenas that have been issued. They haven't answered all of our questions. But most importantly, you have an investigation that was started that it appears now for political reasons. The Democrats have been claiming that there was collusion between the Republicans and the Russians. And what we're finding out is that there was a collusion, but the collusion was between the Democrats, the Department of Justice, and the people who were doing this dossier. So we have a problem, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
Well, I must tell you, Congressman, that I had a couple of your fellow congressmen on Justice last Saturday night, and they said that they had gotten approval to start with the subpoenas as quickly as possible, given the resistance by the FBI as well as the Department of Justice. It must frustrate you as an elected congressman that, for some reason, the FBI thinks that they're above everyone when in fact they clearly are not.
Well, we had the FBI director in our Judiciary Committee,
Christopher Wray,
and he promised us that he was going to get to the bottom of this. We also had the chief deputy at the Department of Justice, and I believe that they're going to get to the bottom of this. I think they're investigating it. You have an investigation going on with all these different members of the previous administration. But as you know, it would be very difficult. If you were a prosecutor, it would be very difficult to trust what these people were doing if you knew that they had a bias against the person that they were prosecuting.
But you know what? Even beyond that, when you say that Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and Christopher Wray, head of the FBI, promised they would get this stuff to you. Well, they haven't gotten this stuff to you, have they?
No, they haven't, and they need to. So
why do you have confidence in them?
Well, I have confidence that we're going to get to the bottom of this. I have confidence that the American people will demand results. We need to know what really happened. We need to know why these investigations started. We need to know whether there was any kind of collusion between the department.
Congressman, with all due respect, we need to know it, but we need to get answers. And, for the last year, nothing has happened. And we got to start holding people in contempt. We got to start making sure that you guys are respected. You have oversight over the FBI and the DOJ, so just keep their feet to the fire. Congressman Labrador, thanks so much for being with us.
We will. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. And joining us now with more reaction, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi and Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. All right, I'm going to go to you, Madam Attorney General. Okay, you're a prosecutor. What do you do when people resist and don't want to give you evidence?
Well, first of all, Janine, you and I, in careers basically in law enforcement, they have to give you the evidence that they need to give you. But more importantly, none of these people, if they're not telling the truth in the big picture, they can never be used as witnesses in any case ever in court again. That's exculpatory evidence that the FBI will always have to turn over if they're not honest. So if it's found that they're not honest when all these congressional hearings are finished, they can't be employed at all by the Department of Justice, period.
All right.
None of them.
All right. But that relates to the Department of Justice. I'm talking about taking them out in cuffs and making sure that if people are perjuring themselves, if there is an effort on a conspiracy on the part of these higher ups in the FBI and DOJ to create a fake dossier, which they then get before a FISA judge, and the judge issues a warrant. I mean, this is a fruit of the poisonous tree, Greg.
One of the key questions was, when did you find out that this dossier was phony? This was posed to Andrew McCabe. We don't really know the answer, but it's critical. If they knew it was phony and they went to a federal judge and used fake or dubious evidence in an affidavit to gain a warrant to spy on President Trump and his associates, that's a fraud on the court. It's a crime. That's a critical question.
But, Greg, the fact that the FBI and the Department of Justice are refusing to give this information. I listened to Rod Rosenstein. I listened to Christopher Wray, the FBI. They were punting. They wouldn't give an answer. They don't have that right. They do not run their own government.
Peter King, a congressman who sat in yesterday behind closed doors into the hearing, said adequate answers were not given by Andrew McCabe. Now, you know what that means as a judge, and I do as a lawyer. That means somebody's lying and covering up. So it's triggered all of these other subpoenas that are going to happen in the course of the next several days to get other witnesses in. And Andrew McCabe, the man on the screen there, has a lot to answer for, because he's a guy whose signature is on the documents saying that he was aware of the origins of the dossier, that is Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee. And yesterday, apparently, according to our source in the hearing, he said, oh, gee, I don't really remember when I found out Hillary was behind this.
And you know what? It's even worse, Pam, because then what he does is he goes with his wife to try to get some money from Hillary, from Tim McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia. I mean, that's a conflict right there. Can you explain to me why the taxpayers are paying this man's salary, why he continues to be deputy head of the FBI?
Well, and he had a duty to reveal that, an affirmative duty. No one should have to come to him and say, do you have a conflict? He clearly had a conflict. So we have McCabe on the Clinton investigation to explain to your viewers how complicated this whole thing is. We have Strzok, who is now still, believe it or not, employed. What is he now, down in HR, but should no longer be employed, who changed the language regarding what regarding Comey and Hillary Clinton, and his text messages to his girlfriend Lisa Page, employed, show complete disdain for the Commander-in-Chief of the United States. They should have never been involved in this investigation.
Go ahead, Greg.
Never.
You know, what's interesting is Democrats in the mainstream media, and I realize that's redundant, keep saying, well, Mueller got rid of Peter Strzok. Well, yeah, but how much damage did Strzok do in the full year he was on the case? He's the guy who launched it in July of last year. And why did Comey cover up the reasons behind getting rid of Peter Strzok for 5 long months, never telling Congress, never telling the American people? That is deceptive and dishonest by Robert Mueller.
Well, I'll tell you, there's more coming up on all this story, and I want to thank you, Pam Bondi and Attorney General Pam Bondi and Greg Jarrett. And coming up, President Trump is threatening to cut foreign aid to countries that plan to oppose his Jerusalem decision at the United Nations tomorrow. This will be interesting.